Okay. The name of the Sicha is Kam Rabba v'Shachte l'Rav Zera. Right? Why is that the name of the Sicha? Well, because that's the Gemara that is discussed. Okay? This is a Sicha from Parshas Tafshin Mem Dalet. Whoever said this in Tafshin Mem Dalet. Remember, it came out as a white little pamphlet, and then disappeared. Everybody saw it, was blown away by this Sicha, and then it disappeared. You couldn't find it until finally when they printed the Chelik Tafshin Lamed Aleph with the Sicha, so they put it in Chelik Lamed Aleph. So this is the second Purim Sicha in Chelik Lamed Aleph in the 31st volume of Likutei Sichos. That's where you'll find it, and it's in Lashon HaKodesh. It's not in Yiddish. It's in Lashon HaKodesh.
Wait, so the cheliks are just the last two of the year?
No, there's a chelik means a volume. So there's 39 volumes, now 40. 39 volumes of Likutei Sichos. So this is in volume 31. No, that has nothing to do with the year. It just happened to be there. Rabbi said this Sicha in Tafshin Mem Dalet. Right? Okay, here there's copies here of the Sicha. Okay? Isa b'Gemara. Right, it's a Gemara in Megillah. Amar Rava. Rava says, Mechayev inish libsumi, a person is obligated to get spiced. Lishtaker b'yayin, Rashi says, to get drunk on wine. B'puria, on Purim, ad lo yoda ben adar Haman lebaruch Mordechai. Until he doesn't know the difference between the wickedness of Haman and the blessedness of Mordechai. Now, obviously, that has to be understood, but that's not what this Sicha is about. Right? It means, simple pshat, it means that a person's understanding of the difference between Haman and Mordechai is beyond intellect. It's not just an intellectual understanding, it's a much deeper understanding. It's not that he goes below intellect, he goes beyond intellect. The continuation of the Gemara then brings a story. The story, now usually a story in the Gemara is, a story can do one of two things. It can support a halacha that was just brought, or it could contradict a halacha that was just brought. Meaning, here's a story, and we see that this is not what should happen. Okay. V'hemshech lezeh, Rabba Rav Zera. Rabba and Rav Zera, two very famous, well-known Amoraim. Rabba was the teacher of Rava and Abaya. Rabba and Rav Zera, Avdu Sudas Purim Bahadi Adadi. They made Sudas Purim together. Ibsum, they drank l'chaims. Nishtakru, Rashi says. Kam Rabba, Rabba got up, Shachte Rav Zera. He shechted Rav Zera. Now, shechting generally means to sack, to like ritually slaughter. Sounds like he killed him. Lamachar, boy rachmi. The next day, he asked for mercy, va'achi, and he brought him back to life. L'shana, the next year, Amar le, Rabba said to Rav Zera, Neisi mar, come mar, v'navid sudas purim badi atai. Let's spend Purim together. Amar le, Rav Zera answered, Loi b'chol shaisa v'shaisa misrachish nisa. Not every moment do miracles happen. Simple pshat, I can't rely on the miracle that you'll be able to bring me back to life, so I don't know whether I want to do this again. Once was really a lot of fun, but I don't know whether I want to die again, because maybe you won't be able to do the miracle and bring me back to life. That's the simple pshat in what he said to me. Okay, now obviously this Gemara requires a certain amount of explanation, because it's hard to imagine that Rabba is a murderer. Right, simple pshat. Okay, so all of the Rebbe is going to now, and we're going to go through this part relatively quickly. Okay, because we do only have 2 days. We can't sit and bring about this. We have 2 days. I want you to see the whole scene. The Rebbe is now going to bring different positions in the Achronim explaining this Gemara. Right. Before the Rebbe explains it the way the Rebbe wants to explain it. At first glance, this story, in accordance with simple understanding, requires explanation. The Echef Sharliya is, how could it possibly be Rabba Nichshal Be'inyan Shel? Skip the brackets for 1 second. That Rabba Nichshal means he stumbled, he failed in a matter of Shvichas Domim. murder, Rahman al-Islam, heaven forfend. Now in brackets, the Rebbe says, Afilu avizarayu da avizarayu. Now, interesting, because we say this relative to murder, to be an accessory to a murder. We actually use that word in English. So avizarayu, avizarim in modern Hebrew are car accessories. Like when you go into those stores that sell all that stuff for your car, the stuff, that's called avizarim, right? Accessories, okay? So to be an accessory to a murder can't be at any shichos whatsoever to shvichas damim. It doesn't make any sense. Rabba is a big tzaddik. The kedusha god is marsha. The marsha is the first place anybody will ever look after they learn a story in the Gemara. The first place you look is the marsha, because here we go. Because if in the back of every Gemara after the Rosh is the marsha. Right? And the Marsha says Chidushay Halachos va'agados Marsha. The Chidushim of Halacha, because the Marsha says perish in Tosfos, right? Also Rashi now and then, but mostly Tosfos, right? And not Art Scroll, perish, right? Meaning you're not going to look in the Marsha if you don't understand Tosfos. Look in the Marsha, and he's going to help you understand it. I mean, usually not. He's going to ask a penetrating question in it. Oh, he'll explain it, but I once heard someone say that if you can't learn the Marsha, it means you didn't understand the Tosfos. Whether that's true or not, at least someone said it. It says something about the Marsha. And then he also wrote a parish on a Godex. Right? Now, if you look on the page, there's different size font. This is the Halacha, this is the Agoda. And the Marsha is the first place anybody looks after they learn a story in the Gemara. They'll turn to the back of the book and they'll learn and see what the Marsha has to say about the story. That's just the last place to go. It's the first place to go. Right? Another place you should always go if you're learning, if you happen to run into an interesting story in the Gemara, go find it in the Maharal and see if the Maharal explains it in his Sefer. He has, 13, 14, 15, I don't know how many volumes of the writings of the Maharal. So he also explains everything the Maharal says is based on Chazal. He quotes a Chazal and then says what he wants to say. He quotes a Chazal, basically says what he wants to say. So there's unbelievable perushim on Chazal in the Maharal. So what does the Marsha say? Mavar shaloi hayakan inyan shel misa mamish. It wasn't that he actually died. Shachte kepshute, that he shechted him simply. Ela ke'ein shachte. It's as if he shechted him. That what? The agbrei chamra, that the wine was strong and it overcame him. V'kafya lishtes yesh miday, and he forced him to drink too much. Ad shechola, until he got sick, v'nata lomos, and he was close to death. I guess he passed out. Uke'ein ze bir gam ba'goysi avets, also of Yonasan Abshitz, other famous achroin. Right, so he also explains shaloi shachtei mamish. I think he shechted in mamish. Ela b'achizas einayim. It was achizas einayim is what magicians do. Not that Rabba's a magician, right? But they trick your eyes, right? They make you see things and it didn't really happen, but it looks like it did, etc. Right? They could have magicians do things that are sometimes just absolutely astounding. You look at what happened. Okay, achizas einayim. Rak shoroyim hayusvurim, the ones who saw thought sheshachtei bemis, that he really shechted it. Af Rav Zera, and so the Yavet says also Af Rav Zera nispal me. They were so convinced that Rava shechted Rav Zera, and they were so whoa. So the Rav Zera himself went whoa, like he thought he had been shechted. Nispal mehem, he was affected by their emotional state, lava charada, so he was overcome by fear. V'nis aleph, and he fainted. Miroiv daiga, from worry. That's the Yavetz. Aval noisef al zeh shepashtus asipur ubefrat tziyumu lamachar by rachmi va'achia. The Rebbe is not going to show that these two pshatim, they're interesting pshatim, but the Rebbe thinks that you have to explain things more fully. Because, in all fairness, he brought him back to life the next day. It doesn't say he got him better, it says he brought him back to life, which seems to indicate that he was in a state of hepech hachayim. In addition to the fact that pashtus asipur, the simple pshat in the pasuk, ubefrat tziyumu, and especially the end of it, lamachar by rachmi v'achia, the next day he asked for mercy and brought him back to life. Ain't a moving up it's not understood based on this. But in addition to that problem, there's another problem. The way that the Marsha and the Yavitz explain the story, Rabba's behavior is still somewhat sketchy to the extent that he brought Rav Zera to such a state of illness. Right? The safe, when all is said and done, this caused damage to the health of Rav Zera. Va'ad shenot elamus. According to the Avitz, he was close to death. Shezeu isser shel Torah. It's forbidden in the Torah. Lachbo b'chavere, to injure a friend be'ezayif shu in any way, or b'frat kanal, especially this way. Okay, so these pshatim certainly take away the notion of murder, but the Rebbe is not satisfied that they explain the idea completely, because after all, it doesn't seem that Rebbe did something so positive according to these explanations. But Tshuva is a Chasam Sefer. Chasam Sefer lived in Hungary, very, very famous Achrein. Mekasher Zeh, he connects this. Sheshachte Rabbi Levzeda im divrei Gemara, with the words of the Gemara. Hai man de b'madim, someone who's born under the influence of Madim, which is Mars. Yeh gaver ashi domi, will be a person who spills blood. Right? In that Gemara over there, it says, relative to that Gemara, Amar Rabba says, Ana b'madim. I come from Madim. I was born under the influence of Madim. Right? Someone who has that nitiyah, that general personality trait. So generally, if it would become known, what would his Rav tell him to do? Become a sheikhet, right? Become a loyal. You like blood? Okay, beseder. So do it in holy ways. Do mitzvahs. Shecht cows, right? Okay.
What's Madim?
Mars. Planet.
Oh,
the planet Mars. Under the influence of the planets and the stars, etc. Aval Ra Ravit, Re'ei Ravit, Yavitz, right? But go see the Rav Yonasan Eibschitz over there, Shekasiv, right? That he says, Aval Dam Vaday Lo Shafach Rabba. He definitely didn't spill blood. Afim Haya B'Maidim, even if he was born under the influence of Mars. But L'Chu'ura Ein Lo Meshaya Etzel Rabba Inyan Shal Shvichas Damim Chas V'Shalom. There's no Inyan whatsoever of murder by Rabba. You have to understand the story in a different way because it just doesn't make any sense. Ukemavur Rambam, as the Rambam says, says the fact that a person is born with a certain natural trait, and that can be a result of different things, right? Nature and nurture. Okay, so we're talking about nature, right? So the person has a certain natural trait to be a certain type of person. This certainly doesn't contradict the idea of free will. The opposite is true. In addition to the fact that a person has a person is naturally a lazy person. Okay, there's people like that. It's like there's people have lots of energy and there's people who are low energy. Okay, so that low energy person, what else is he given by the Eibishter in addition to this natural state of low energy? He's given also the power by Kodesh Baruch Hu to overcome these natural limitations. Certainly that was the case by Rabba. Okay. So we want a deeper explanation of all this. Right? Even more wondrous. In the continuation of the story, Mefurish Canal Lashana Amar Leinese Marvin Abitsudas Purim Ba'adei Adavi. The next year, what did Rabba do? He invited him back over. So that clearly, did Rabba do something so terrible the first time?
No.
It doesn't make sense that he did something so terrible the first time. He said, come back for Purim, let's do it again. Well, I don't understand. You killed him. That's not so good. We don't want to do that again. Right? So Rabba inviting him back seems to indicate that Rabba's behavior was not untoward. Kloimar. Not only not only do you not find in the Gemara that Rabba did tshuva for this, furthermore, he invited Rav Zera back for Purim, right, to come and spend Purim together, right? Despite the fact he knows He knows that what happened last year could theoretically happen this year. I mean, what are they going to do? Sit there and drink soda? No, they're going to sit at Purim Suda. And what do you do at a Purim Suda? You say L'chaim. Okay, so... There are people who are makbid that the first L'chaim you say is Shabir wine. What you say after that? Dafka were so makbid it's wine, but there are people who are makbid the first one should be wine. I spent Purim with Rabbi Groner a number of times. He drank only wine on Purim. But I don't know what he, I don't, when he sat for bringing, I don't know what he drank. I've seen Bud. When I sat for bringing, I never really noticed. But Purim, he drank wine, only wine. But most people will the first L'chaim make on wine. And then after that, he says, say L'chaim on whatever you want. Right? It should obviously be something with low sugar content. Whatever you say L'chaim on. Okay. Zois v'oi. Hasiba shurav zeda loy nenel hazman nasa shel Rabba. In addition, the reason that Rav Zera did not answer the invitation of Rava, didn't accept it. What did he say? Miracles don't happen all the time. He didn't say, what are you, crazy? You're a maniac. You killed me. He didn't say that. He said, I can't rely on the miracle that you'll bring me back to life. So I guess what he did at first wasn't so terrible, which we really don't understand. That essentially was also ready this year. He was ready to go back to Rabba and then spend Purim together. Even though even though Rabba will do what he did the year before. Right? Now look at footnote 10. It just adds. A person not allowed to put themselves in a dangerous situation. Right? So Rav Zera can't put himself in a dangerous situation. So then, why did he say I can't come because it's dangerous? He didn't say that. He said I can't come because you might not be able to bring me back to life. I mean, that seems to be the danger. Vatam shalahiskim, and the reason that he didn't agree, because he wasn't sure, shagam hapam, that also this time yikra hanes, it'll happen, the miracle, Rabba Yichya, he said the Rabba will revive him achrei Purim. Now since he was after Purim, that will be pointed out. Lamachar, he brought him back to life the next day. He didn't bring, if in simple pshat, Rav Zera died, Rabba didn't say, oh my gosh, and bring him back to life. Let him stay there. And the next day he brings him back to life. Which is also interesting. That's what it says. Okay. Vehine. Okay, Matsinu biyurim al derech drush v'seid. There are explanations of all this based on drush seid, meaning this is all conceptual, it's mystical. Shesipur zeh sheibsun kam rabba shachar Rav Zera merames et hints linyanim ruchnim. It's all spiritual things. Well, lefizeh, based on this, efshar lemer, it's possible to say she'ena elo mashal bavad. So it's only a parable. It didn't happen in Gashmis. Val derech shematzino inin de mibsame be'uvde de Rabba Bar Chana in Baba Basra, in the Ayans. The footnote that name says Ayin Gimel, but it takes a while. There's quite a few pages. There's all sorts of stories of Rabba Bar Chana, absolutely wild mashalim of Rabba Bar Chana, and strange birds flying with oil dripping from their wings, and wild stories. So it's all understood to be mashalim and ruchniistic things. And the first, I don't know how many, because I'm not such an expert in the Sefer, but I mean I've learned the Sefer because it's an amazing Sefer. For sure, the first 8 or 10, if not more, I'm not sure. The first 8 or 10 Torahs in Likutei Maran of Rav Nachman of Breslev. So his first 8-10 Torahs at least are based on the Gemaras of Rabba Bar Chana and Baba Basra. Meaning he explains an idea in Chassidus, and then he says, and that's pshat in this story of Rabba Bar Chana, and he says the story and then explains the story based on the Chassidus he just taught you. All right, so there's wild stories, absolutely wild. They're just incredible. Okay, so you could say that about this. It's like one of the Rabba Bar Chana stories. She'ein ela moshel, it's just a parable. Valdera kama misapurim shebesugi the Rabbi Kaplan, like the stories of Rabbi Kaplan. She'ein mosholim v'ramazim, they're examples and parables al inyanim ruchnim regarding spiritual things, and that's exactly how Rav Nachman of Breslov explains them all there in the Likutei Maran. V'lo she'iru b'feil b'gashmis. Not that they actually happened in Gashmis. But you can't say that here. Why not? The Rebbe says. You can't say that relative to our story. Shesipa the Rebbe Zayda, he rak moshel v'remez al inyan ruchni. It's just a story about ruchnistic things. Why? This story is brought as a continuation, and as we said earlier, it could be either supporting or disagreeing with. We're going to see there's two opinions. Ubatar siur chizuk v'dugma. It's brought as a help, a strengthening, and an example. L'psak halacha shebegemara. L'psak halacha in the Gemara. This is brought l'halacha. This story. It's not a remez in Ruchnius. It's in Gashmis. Because what was the halacha before? What was the line before? Right? Amar Rava chayav inish libsumi b'puri adelo yoda bein aram and Boruch Mordechai. Chayav inish libsumi every day. Right? So a person has to say l'chaims. Okay. So then after Rava paskins that a person has to say l'chaims on Purim, so then we bring the story, which seems to support the idea. Seems to be a pretty clear example of saying l'chaim in a rather extreme way. Because what did Rava say? And then the story, Rabba and Rav Zayda kimu as a chiyuv. Rabba and Rav Zayda were makayim the chiyuv that now Rabba comes before Rava, right? He's his Rav, but Zayda, but the halacha is there. Rava just happens to be Rava with an aleph. Just happens to be the mouthpiece of the halacha, but the halacha exists, and Rabba and Rav Zayda are proof. Look, you see, the generation before, Rabba and Rav Zayda, they sat and drank a lot of l'chaims on Purim. Rabba Rav Zayda kimu as a chiyuv lipsumei ad lo yoda b'feil mamish. Since we're talking about something that's relevant to halacha, therefore you're forced to explain it. It had to happen in Gashmis. It can't be understood on a ruchnistic level. Right? It's halacha. This story was brought to illustrate a halacha in Gashmis that a person, according to Rava, a person is obligated to drink more l'chaim than normal on Purim. I want to add here that the Rebbe's gezeda of 4 l'chaims exists on Purim also. That being said, 4 l'chaims a person can definitely reach a state of adul yada. Adul yada does not mean you get sick and you fall off your chair. It means you open up your consciousness to a slightly different level of understanding what godliness is about. It's no longer intellectual, it's beyond intellect, it's experiential, right? Okay? And sometimes, interestingly enough, I mean, this has to be said because some people, drinking is a pretty dangerous thing. I think drugs have probably surpassed alcohol. I'm not sure. But it might be the drugs have surpassed alcohol as the single greatest danger to humankind. But, maybe not. Maybe it's still alcohol. I'm just not sure. I mean, it might still be alcohol. But in terms of destroying lives, alcohol destroys lives as much or more than just about anything else in Olam Hazeh. So why do we use alcohol? Well, you also have to be open to the fact that every time we are asked to celebrate Geula, Chazal establish a halacha that we should drink more wine than we usually do. 4 cups Pesach, Ad Lo Yadan Purim. It's very interesting. In other words, there's some connection between those two ideas. In other words, alcohol, as terrible as it is, can also be used to open someone up to a slightly different state of reality, so they're sensitive to things they might not be sensitive to generally. Rabbi Steinsaltz used to talk about it. He said, we drink this Drano because it cleans out the pipes. It's like Drano. It just cleans out all the schmutz. Because there's no question that what falls are filters. Certain filters fall. So now those filters might be very, very important, right? A person whose filters fall and they act in a way that's completely unacceptable should not touch liquor ever in their life. A person who can do it in such a way that the filters that disappear are the filters separating them from a deeper experience of Elokus, so then that person can say L'chaim, but if we're Brennan or Purim and Pesach, you have no choice. You have to drink 4 cups of wine. If you can't handle it in such a way that you turn into a raving lunatic every time you touch anything alcoholic, so then drink, the least alcoholic wine possible. And if it's so bad, talk to a Rav and see if he'll let you drink grape juice. Though it's going to be pretty hard to find a hectare for in Pesach unless you're a pregnant woman, which probably none of you identify as in particular at this particular moment in your life. So,
Not yet.
What?
Not yet.
Not yet. Hopefully never. And hopefully you will be married to one. Right? And so it might be, at certain points in pregnancy, a woman will be told by a Rav that she can drink maybe 1 cup or 2 cups of grape juice, right? So that's Beseder, but there is a chiyuv in Shulchan Aruch to drink l'chaims on Purim if you can do it. If you can't do it, so then don't talk to a Rav and say I can't do it. If every time I drink alcohol I get sick to my stomach and I start acting like a lunatic. So don't. So no one wants to be around a lunatic getting sick. So just don't do that. Don't do that to yourself and don't do that to anybody else. Most people aren't like that, especially people who went to college. They practiced a lot. So, you drink l'chaims in a responsible way to open yourself up to what the Rebbe is going to describe in this sicha. The Rebbe used to drink l'chaims on Purim. The Rebbe said he drank l'chaims on Purim. The Rebbe would ask for this is a famous for bringing with the Rebbe. I don't remember what. I think maybe it was your test. The Rebbe asked for a volunteer for Ad Lo Yoda. Do I have a volunteer for Ad Lo Yoda? That someone will drink so much l'chaim they'll reach Ad Lo Yoda mamish b'pashtus, meaning they'll just pass out. Right? Do I have a volunteer? No one volunteered. So the Rebbe smiled. He said, "Wait, if I do it, you'll never get out of here." Well, this will never end. The Rebbe's going to bring just for hours. So the Rebbe said that to the Chassidim. So someone, I don't know whether anybody volunteered. I'm not sure. What? I think it was Eli Wiesel on. It wasn't Purim, but Eli Wiesel was. I think it was Eli Wiesel tells the story. But he was. Is he still alive? He passed away. He was such a special Jew. Wow. So he was very close to the Rebbe. And he always said he's a chassid of the Rebbe, even though he's a Hungarische Yid. He said, "I'm a Hungarische. I'm not a Russian." And so he's a Vishnitzer. And he said, "Okay, but really, the Rebbe is my Rebbe." So he was. He was. I think it was Eli Wiesel. It's by the Rebbe, and the Rebbe told him to fill up a cup and say l'chaim. A regular for bringing. It wasn't poor. Fill up a cup and say l'chaim. He was a chassid, okay. He wasn't. No. He was a chassid. How from he was a separate issue, but he was a chassid. So they filled up the cup and he drank l'chaim. Really. So the Rebbe said, "Nachamo." Filled up a cup. So he passed out. And they took him out of 7-7. They lay him down outside, and I think pretty sure it's Eli Wiesel. The Rebbe Pashut made him pass out at a which is fair. That Eli Wiesel, right? He was very close to the Rebbe. So I think it was him. Right? Rebbe just, for whatever reason, the Rebbe decided he just and they lay him down outside, and that was his bringing. I don't know, I have no idea why in the world the Rebbe would do that to him, but I think it was him. Pretty sure it was him. So I was going to talk in this sicha about how drinking alcohol, specifically he's going to talk about yayin, can be useful in avodah, and a person has to be open to the fact that Chazal did tell us that that's what we should do on Purim and Pesach, which is very interesting. Drink more wine than we usually drink. Most of us do not drink 4 cups of wine with a meal. And at the end of those 4 cups, I think our conscious reality has changed a little bit. We are a little, whatever you want to call it, shikker is, can sound negative. Okay, but I think a person's a little shikker at the end of the Seder, right? That's evidently what Chazal think where we should be. Now we have to figure out how to use that positive. That's also why we say l'chaim to the forbring. We don't forbring to say l'chaim. We say l'chaim in order to forbring. Right? Those are completely different things. And Rav Mendel used to talk about that all the time. Right? When he forbring, even though sometimes the same Rav Mendel If a bacher was all stopped up and his pipes were so blocked that the guy couldn't open up the Eibishter if you hit him over the head, Rav Mendel would literally open his mouth and pour from a bottle down his throat, and the poor kid. Same Mendel would say, "Don't you dare come to Farbrengen to drink." You hear a lot of young Lubavitchers, for Farbrengen, we're going to really say L'chaim. You don't come to Farbrengen to say L'chaim, you say L'chaim so you can Farbrengen. And if you're Farbrengen to say L'chaim, so you're not Farbrengen, you're just saying L'chaim, so go to a bar. Don't go to a bar. But right, I mean, you turn something completely holy into just nonsense. Okay? When people start talking about the different tastes of the stuff they're drinking, we get nervous. Right? It all tastes like gasoline. But, whatever. And wine doesn't necessarily. Okay, so let's see. We have to go back to it. Can't forget about this. It's just such an important idea. Mm-hmm. Okay, so now this story, I'm going to just say outside to the end of that paragraph. This story is brought lahalocha. So it can't be ruchnius. It's got to be kashmius. Now, however you explain it, it's happening in real life because we don't bring spiritual ramazim to explain halacha. That doesn't mean there isn't room for spiritual mashalim. Of course there are. Gemara is full of them, but not la'alacha. Okay. V'chein, that's the second paragraph before Gimel. V'chein muchach midivrei Ranu bala ma'ar. Two other rishonim that you'll find generally in the back of the Gemara. So it's so handy to have a Gemara here. Where will you find the Ran and the bala ma'ar? So let's see if in this rif. Oh, shit. Look at that. The Eibishter is so... Right? So, wait, but we want a Balamor also. Okay, the Ran, where will you... First of all, the Ran wrote a Sefer Chedusha Ran on Shas. There's also Drushes Ran. The Ran was a Rishon, Sephardi Rishon. But the Ran also wrote a Perish on the Rif. So you see, Rabbeinu Nisim, that's the Ran. So this is the Ran's explanation of the Rif. Rabbi Kaplan. Right? One of the three people that Shulchan Aruch looked to decide halacha. There he is. It was just so good. Everybody's right here. Right? Also on the Rif, there's a parish called the Bala Ma'or. Ma'or Gadol. That's the Bala Ma'or. These are two very, very, very important Rishonim. The Bala Ma'or was so important that the Ramban wrote his critical comments on the Bala Ma'or called Milchemes Hashem, godly wars, the war of the Eibishter. And he takes the Bala Ma'or to task. He just goes crazy. Every time the Bala Ma'or says anything, the Ramban goes off his rocker. But besides it, the Bala Ma'or is unbelievably unique and conceptual understanding of everything in the Gemara. I had a friend who wanted to finish Shas, but he couldn't stand learning things and not understanding it. But he wanted to learn Shas, so he didn't want to do Daf Yomi. He couldn't stand it. He's not that kind of person. So he wanted to really understand everything. So he decided he'll learn every Bala Ma'or in Shas. So he learned the Bala Ma'or. That meant he had to learn the Sugya. So he'd have to learn the Sugya and then learn the Bala Ma'or, and that would be a very deep and conceptual understanding of everything going on. He learned every Bala Ma'or in Shas. That's how he finished Talmud Bavli. Not by just reading every word in Daf Yomi and going, okay, Beseder, I can check another Daf. I've done. Right? That wasn't his idea of Talmud Torah. Right? V'chein muchach midivrei Aranu Bala Ma'or she'aviu es had kasev Rav Rabbeinu Ephraim Zal, another early Rishon. Mihau uvda, the Ran and the Bala Ma'or bring la halacha Rabbeinu Ephraim. Rabbeinu Ephraim was an earlier Rishon. Mihau uvda, from that story to come Rabbi B'Shakli Rav Zeda. Why is that story brought in the Gemara? They say, Rabbeinu Ephraim says, Idche le meimra de Rava. This is coming to contradict the statement of Rava. Rava said, Chayav inish l'psume b'puri ad yoda. Right? That's what Rava said. Then they bring the story. According to Rabbeinu Ephraim, why do they bring the story? No, you don't have to, because look what can happen. So now, obviously it happened in Gashmis. I'm going to say this Ruchni's Dika story tells me that I don't have to drink wine on Purim. Obviously it happened in Gashmis. And they bring Rabbeinu Ephraim, and Rabbeinu Ephraim says that this story is telling me that we don't paskin like Rav, and a person should not drink wine on Purim. And they paskin leisochas hakavasa, but we don't paskin like Rabbeinu Ephraim, and we don't. V'lav shaper domi l'mei v'rachin. It's not good to do that. I mean, it's not good to not drink on Purim. Umukach mizeh the daitim bepashtish sipa the Rav Zeru kipshute. So obviously they're saying that this happened but kipshute, right? that therefore they're paskin yilach v'nigram hezek misel Rav Zeru, and this brought about some sort of damage. It might even be death to Rav Zeru. Ki belav hachi, without this, ein makim leimar shemishum kach yivata l'chiv l'psumir peri. Why in the world, if this is all in ruchnius, would I say that it would nullify the halacha of Rava? So now we paskin like Rava, okay, but there's actually a bdeya in the Rishonim, and it's brought by the Ran and the Balamar that says that the story contradicts Rav Zeir's halacha, and so it's called a Maisa Listar, a story to contradict, not a story to support. It's a Maisa Listar, it's a story to contradict the previous halacha. Okay, so obviously it happened in Gashmi. So how do we work? Lochein nira leimar, therefore it's necessary, it's reasonable to say, Shasipur zeha yekapshutet, this story was as it is in the simplest form. Shikateitza mimatzav shel ipsum, as a result of the situation of ipsum, they drank l'chaims, nigroma al yadei Rabba, it was caused by Rava, misa kipshute l'Rav Zeira, death to Rav Zeira, physical death. Mikom makim haisa misa zu, nevertheless this death, umaisa Rabba, and the deeds of Rabba, ba'oifim kazeh, was in such a way she'ein ba shum srach, there's no connection whatsoever, afilu shel shvichas damim, not even a srach, not even no connection whatsoever to something negative, or b'chalal le'zinyan bilti rotzu, or anything that's undesirable. V'ad k'rei kach, to such an extent, shegam l'shana ba, rotzu Rabba, lachzor shuva, le'zim anaga, Rabba wanted to spend Purim together with Rav Zeira, and assuming that means to do the same thing next year. So clearly there's nothing negative about this, but it certainly looks strange. How can it be that Rav Zeira died and Rav brought him back to life? What's that all about? So in order to explain this, the Rebbe explains the famous story of the sons of Aaron, Nadav and Avihu, based on the Orach Chaim HaKadosh. Nadav and Avihu, what happened? We know Nadav and Avihu brought an Eish Zara, some sort of strange fire, into the Beis HaMikdash in the context of their service in the Mishkan. In the Mishkan, in the desert, their souls left their bodies. Moshe Rabbeinu's response to that was to tell Aaron that he thought, we're going to see this, that he thought that he and Aaron were going to be the holy ones that brought about some sort of great revelation of godliness, but it was Dafka his sons. So on one hand, what they did was definitely negative, because they're not supposed to pass away, they're supposed to stay in Eilam Hazeh. On the other hand, they reached an incredibly high level of spiritual attainment. Nadav and Avihu. Okay, so the Rebbe is going to explain that story based on the Orach Chaim HaKadosh. It was called by Ashkenazim the Sephardi Baal Shem Tov. I assume maybe the Sephardim called the Baal Shem Tov the Ashkenazi Orach Chaim. I don't know. V'yesh leimer b'zeh, the Baal Shem Tov the Orach Chaim said that if they could have met, they tried to, but it didn't work out. If they could have met, they could have brought Mashiach together. V'yesh leimer b'zeh behekdim ha'mavur b'inyan misas nadav and Avihu. Shemavar b'chazal meisu mipnei, why did they die? One of the, and this, Rashi brings this in his parish on Chumash, and it's also simple pshat in the Chumash, because right after the story, what halacha is taught in the Torah, yayin v'sheichel mishtiyad v'sheichel l'nichnas l'mishkan, I don't forget the exact, I don't remember, it'll be brought, don't remember the exact, nichnas l'kodesh, remember the exact lashon of the pasuk, it'll be brought here, that you shouldn't drink wine and enter into the kodesh. In other words, it seems to be having drunk wine. Shasui yayin nichnasu l'mikdash. Having drunk of wine, they entered into the mikdash. That was the Mishkan. Shamisa zu Isaac Shura, this death was connected, Taitzah, result, Mishtiyas yayin yesim yadai, from drinking too much wine. If you do it to me, it's known the wonder. Mefurish b'kosav, Shemesha Amel La'aron. It's beferish in the pasuk. It's not a medrash. If it's a medrash, it's still true, but it's in Torah b'chsav, not in Torah b'peh. That Moshe says to Aaron, this is what the Eibishter said, with those close to me, I will be sanctified. Upaperish Rashi, what does Rashi say on that pasuk? What is Moshe saying to his brother Aaron? They're greater than you and me. So I thought this would happen through us, it happened through them. The Kate said Yitochen, how could it possibly be? Sheyetzlam davar bilti ratzui. There'd be something so undesirable. Ubefrat, particularly ad k'rei kach, to such an extent, that they entered into the mikdash and shasu yayin, to put it in the vernacular, drunk. How can that be? That's what happened. Moshe Rabbeinu says they're unbelievably holy. Every time the Rebbe mentions Zerach Chaim, he always says Zerach Chaim Kadosh. There's one other person who gets that. The Rebbe always says the Heilige Rishner, the Holy Rishner. Always. The Rishner is always the Heilige Rishner, and the Zerach Chaim is always the Zerach Chaim Kadosh.
Not the Baal Shem Tov?
I don't want to say Baal Shem Tov Kadosh is the Baal Shem Tov. They'll say necessarily Baal Shem Tov Kadosh, maybe sometimes. But the Rishner was always referred to as the Heilige Rishner, and the Zerach Chaim is always referred to as the Zerach Chaim Kadosh. He was pretty holy, the Zerach Chaim. This is the Zerach Chaim on that story. Nadav and Avihu Meisum Mipnei Geidel Chukosam, their great longing, Liskarev LaKadosh Baruch, come close to Kadosh Baruch, Sheloi Nimnu. They didn't prevent themselves, Mikarev, from approaching, Ledvekus, the clinging, Neimus, dearness, Arivus, sweetness, Yedidus, closeness, Chavivus, dearness, Nashikus, kissing, Masikus, another word for sweet. Talking about being close to the Eibishter. Ad till they reached the state of klois nafshosim mehem, their souls left their bodies. We came so close to a Kadosh Baruch Hu that they couldn't come back. They were supposed to come back. Not that what they did was what we should do, but what they did was they did what's called ritzay without shame. They went up without being able to come back. They got so close to the Eibishter they couldn't come back. The Pella of Moshe Rabbeinu, one of the greatest wonders of Moshe Rabbeinu, and people don't even think about it until they encounter it in Chassidus, right? Moshe Rabbeinu went up to the mountain and spent days learning Torah with the Eibishter. What's most astounding about Moshe Rabbeinu? He came back down. Wow. He was willing to go back down and deal with all the schmutz of Elam Hazeh, even though he'd been up there seeing godliness in a way that's it's unimaginable. That's really astounding. Then you're really bittul, because the real bittul is coming back. Ritzay is this state of absolute pleasure. The bittul in it all is coming back down. Then you're doing it for the Eibishter, not for your own spiritual pleasure. So we want to leave that. I want to stay there. Why do I want to come back? Moshe came back a number of times. He went up 3 times. He came back down 3 times. One of the times he came back down, there was an eagle waiting for him.
Rashi Sunday.
Monday. Because they say this parsha is divided up in a rather strange way. You might have noticed that Rishon and Sheni are the whole parsha. So they say one of the explanations is in order that the Chet Egel should happen on Levi, that Levi should get the aliyah for Chet Egel. Why?
Because they were the only that didn't.
They were involved. So that's one of the. I understand as Al-Pi Pshat why this parsha is divided up the way it is. Now, of course, you could always say, okay, Eibishter, so just write a shorter Rishon. Okay, Seder, but okay, that's the way it is. Rishon and Sheni are the whole parsha. And the Chittas now is very short. Ubaloshna Kosa, what does the pasuk say? B'kirvosam lifnei havaya v'yamusu. They're coming close in front of Hashem and they died. That's what the pasuk says about them. Hainu shesibas misosami. The reason for their death is kirvosam lifnei havaya. Okay. V'zeu gam. This is also the explanation of having drunk wine, they entered into the mikdash. Hakavana beyayin, what does it mean yayin? This is the Zerach Chaim explaining all this. Shasu yayin nichnasu lemikdash. Hakavana yayin is l'seidei sepnimius Torah. The secrets and the inner meaning of the Torah. They were learning pnimius Torah. Kamaimer nichnas yayin yotza seid. The kamei sheyayin gashmi, just like it goes in wine, and what comes out is secrets. Now that can also happen in gashmis. That's why, on a certain level, people bring about the fact that Purim. What's Purim? So Purim, the Chazal said, okay, so drink a little wine, let the filters fall down. When does the year start in Aveda? The year starts in Aveda in Pesach. Pesach is the beginning of Avodah. The year starts in terms of counting years in Rosh Hashanah, Beseder, but in terms of Avodah, when does the year start? Pesach. We get out of Mitzrayim. We start again. Try to get out of our limitations. We're starting again. We're given this koyach to get out of our limitations and get to a point where we can actually accept the Torah properly. Shiurs. Okay. Starts at Pesach. The end of the whole 12-month process. What happens? Purim. Where are you holding? Let down all the guards and see what comes out. What are you talking about? God or Shtus? Who are you really? Where are you? Right? I told you guys the story about a friend of mine who I spent one Purim with him in my life. I must say it's a very memorable Purim. It was 35 years ago at least. We were in Chicago on Purim, which was not recommended, but whatever. I was in Chicago on Purim. I was traveling around recruiting students, etc. So spent Purim with good friends who were living in Chicago. And I didn't know this, but he never ever drank anything. Because he couldn't, liquor always made him sick to his stomach. Always. He just would get sick to his stomach every time he drank this. So every Purim, he would get sick to his stomach at a certain point during Purim. But he would drink l'chaims, and then he knew he was going to get sick to his stomach, and he would get sick to his stomach and then go to sleep, and that was his Purim. And he was patient and effort to do this every year. So I happened to be sitting next to him once, and for some strange reason, this was, I think, done before we started drinking l'chaims. We both ended up wearing old shaitlach of his wife under our hats. So we were sitting there in a hallway in someone's house this guy was embarrassingly sober on Purim. It was not a Lubavitcher, this guy. How we ended up there is a long story, but anyway, we're sitting in this house, a very, 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 very fancy house in Chicago. And Shimon is sitting on the floor, and it's clear that he doesn't feel well. And he looked at me with this green look and said, "I really don't feel well." I said, "Oh, what, you're going to get sick, really?" He said, "Yeah, I always do." I said, "Oh, okay." So then he just says, he goes, "God is great." And then he threw up in his wife's shirt. Took it off and he threw up. I'll never forget. His last words were, "God is great." And then we literally picked him up and took him home and put him on the couch. And he was, on the couch all night. And then he woke up the next morning not feeling very good. He's a doctor. Harvard graduate. Harvard graduate doctor. He did Harvard Medical School. This was his, he lives there in Edges. Very, very, very well thought of doctor. Very, very, very special guy. So this was his Purim. I didn't know this. I didn't know. I had known him for years. I didn't know that he could not. Purim was the same every year, and his wife said, "Yeah, I put up with this every year, but he won't not drink. It says you're supposed to drink l'chaim 3 times." But I remember his last words before he got sick: "God is great." And then the next morning he was, feeling horrible, but laughing, up and laughing and saying, "Oh my goodness gracious, I'm so glad Purim's over." When all the filters were gone, what words came out? God is great. Okay, that did good. Good. Okay, ready to start again at Pesach and go further. I remember it's funny, Purim in my house. So a bunch of Bachrim from Mayanot were there. And we were dancing around from house to house with the neighbors. Hashem will do this year, hopefully. It'll be spontaneous. But no, it just usually happens at some point we end up going, especially my next door neighbor. You'll hear the noise coming from my next door neighbor. His son plays the organ and sings off key. Who's a Lubavitcher. He's not a Lubavitcher. His son's a Lubavitcher. It's the Lubavitcher making all the noise. But so we put up with it. But so we danced down to the end. There was a guy at the end, a different guy now. Danced down to the end, and he runs a big sem, and he had a huge table, Baruch Hashem, lots of people at his table, and we dance in, and he's sitting there, Baruch Hashem, he's saying l'chaim, and he says, "You guys say that your Rebbe's Mashiach, I'm Mashiach." Okay, fine. So we went home. 2 days later, maybe even more. I remember when it was. But today he is a Lubavitcher Chassid who lives in Beersheba, part of an English community of Lubavitchers in Beersheba. This Bacher who was with me at that point. And he told me, whether he told me right away or told me later, I don't remember. But he said, what convinced me to be a Lubavitcher Chassid? He said, when Lubavitchers get drunk, they say their Rebbe's Mashiach. When this guy got drunk, he said, he's Mashiach. I'm with them. He said that's the moment he decided, I'm a Lubavitcher. That Purim. Not a Yisrael Shurik. Really good guy. From Brooklyn. Boy from Brooklyn. Purim's an interesting day. Yeah, I mean, you won't believe Purim in Yerushalayim. You just won't believe it. I mean, it's a little weird this year because it's 3 days, but the whole city is Purim. It's just crazy. It's absolutely crazy. This is a little bizarre this year because I mean, here we are. We're going to be sitting in Farbrenning on Purim, and it's not even Purim. I mean, it is because but it isn't. I mean, we don't say Al Anisim and Pinchim. It's just whatever. It's an interesting thing. Okay. Let's go for 3 more minutes and then we'll stop. Okay, I just want to make sure we get basically halfway through so we can finish it tomorrow. I said I wouldn't forbring, but it's impossible not to forbring about these things because they're so important, right? Okay, so what was Nichnas Shasu Yain? Let's just get to the bottom of the page quickly. Shasu Yain was Seidus Torah. The Kamesh Yain Gashmi Megales Atomun Beliba Shel Adam, that just like physical wine reveals that which is hidden in the heart of a person, and that's why if there's bad stuff in there, don't drink. That's what comes out. Don't drink. Keinu Baruchnias, Sotu Baruchnias, Sheyain Shel Torah, the wine of Torah. I know Gilui Seidus Torah. Sotu, the wine of Torah is revealing the secrets of the Torah. What's hidden? V'shasui yain, what does it mean they went in shasui yain? Mara al geidel v'oitzem agilui pnimiyas Torah. They were learning pnimiyas Torah to such an extent. They were learning about the Eibishter to such an extent. They were learning about Einoid Milvade to such an extent. There's nothing other than the Eibishter. What happened to them? They left their physical bodies. They became so unbelievably powerfully aware of Hashem Echad that there was nothing else. Not them. Ad lamatzav shel kleis nefesh, until their souls left their body. The kamesh b'shasu yain kipshita, just like drinking physical wine. Haraya yayin gerim, the yayin brings about what bittul achushim. A person, this is what wine, that's what alcohol does, right? It dulls your senses. So then, dulling your senses means what? Well, in a positive level, it will mean that I'm less sensitive to self because those experiences of self, which are my senses, are dulled. So I might be open to something else. Kach geidle shel gilui zeh, so too the greatness of this gilui v'shtekikus. It's talking about not of an view and learning Pnimiyas Torah, right? So too the greatness of this clinging and longing for godliness. Garmu etzlam, it caused by them bittul achushim. They lost sight of their sense of self. Va'ad l'kleis nefesh, until their soul taka left their body. V'lochin, therefore, achrei, this is all the Arachaim on the story. Achrei mu'urazeh, after this event, he's here to tell the Torah warns. This is the pasuk that I couldn't quote. Yayin v'shecher al teisht. The next psukim after the story is Yayin v'shecher al teisht. Don't drink wine and beer, meaning a kohen can't drink wine and beer and go serve in the mikdash. So clearly there was also an union of physical wine. It's also to drink wine in a way of drunkenness. That's why it's not so simple for Kohanim to get drunk. Why? What is a Kohen? Kohen can't go into the Beis HaMikdash drunk. So we paskin halacha. This is one of the rayas for Rashi's position in how the Beis HaMikdash is going to show up. Right now, the Rebbe makes peace between Rashi and the Rambam, but there's a machlekes Rashi and the Rambam whether or not we build the third Beis HaMikdash or the Eibishter builds the third Beis HaMikdash. The Rambam holds we do. The Rebbe explains that what we do, all we have to do is build the doors, right? And that's called building the Beis HaMikdash, because the halacha we paskin that a kohen can't get drunk lest he be called to serve in the Beis HaMikdash. The Mashiach comes and he serves in the Beis HaMikdash. Now, how long is that going to take? If we're building the Beis HaMikdash, it's going to take, even if we build it miraculously in a week, it's going to take some time. Whereas, according to Rashi, the Beis HaMikdash is going to float down and just, show up on Har Bayis when Mashiach shows up. Okay, so that will be instantaneous. So that seems to be pshat, since we paskin l'halacha that a kohen shouldn't get so drunk that he can't do Aveda in the Beis Hamikdash. That means he's going to have to do the Aveda within the time limit that his drunkenness won't disappear. How long is that? Relatively short period of time. Now, interestingly enough, it's also true that generally when certain things happen that are very, very shocking, drunkenness disappears, right? Which is also interesting, like, why, the Kohen, if a drunk Kohen who all of a sudden hears Mashiach is revealed and you have to go to the Beis Hamikdash, what would probably happen to that person? He'd sober up immediately, right? Like, whoa, right? So that it's an interesting halacha, right? Dr. Wench should live and be well and be healthy. He's not so healthy right now. Dr. Wench came to Gemara class for 8 or 9 years. And Dr. Wench was the first doctor that saw the Rebbe when the Rebbe was sick on Shmini Atzeres. When the Rebbe had the very, very serious heart attack in 770 during the Kafis. So Dr. Wench was the first doctor there because he was there. And he used to tell the story every year here in Gemara Shir on Rosh Chodesh Kislev when we celebrate the Rebbe's health from that event. So he would always tell the story. And it was an amazing story. And the first thing he would always say, he would tell a certain preamble to the story. But then, when this relative to the story, he said they went. There was a certain house they used to go to in Fabring on Shmini Atzeres Simchas Torah before they'd go to 770 to dance. So he said they went to there, they Fabranged, and they Fabranged hard. He said they walked into 770. Eilam Haza was a dream, right? He said the second that he saw what was happening to the Rebbe, he was as sober as could be. He went over. He was an emergency physician, so he went over and started taking care of the Rebbe. He said it was so interesting that he sobered up immediately, right? Because all of a sudden it had to be, right? So tells the story that when he was walking with the secretaries. They cleared out 770, and there were a few people left, Boruch, because Boruch are more important than everybody else, and they don't have to listen to anybody else. So when they said to leave, so the Boruch don't have to, because we're Boruch. So they were walking with the Rebbe from where the Rebbe was to the back to go upstairs. So he said 4 times from where they were to the back of the shul, Bochum took him and threw him to the ground. Like, who are you and what are you doing and why are you walking with the Rebbe? Like, who are you? So he said, I'm the doctor. They picked him up, dusted him off, and he went. 4 times before he got to the back of the shul, he was tackled that he shouldn't be walking with the secretaries and the Rebbe. But he made it alive. Okay, let's finish the next paragraph and we'll stop. After this event, he's here. From this, it's also into the kasher sheisim yain shabbatera. Also, when you drink wine of the Torah, pnimius the Torah, seidus verizing the Torah, the secrets of the Torah. Tzrichin lizara. A person has to be careful. Shalei lavei lamatzav shel shichrus. He shouldn't come to a state of drunkenness. Shel kleis nefesh, of his soul leaving his body. Now, how would that be in everyday life? That a person doesn't take his responsibilities in Gashmi seriously because he's so connected to spiritual reality. No. Has to be down. He has to have, as the Baal Shem Tov said, he has to have his feet on the ground and his head in the clouds. But he has to have his feet on the ground. It has to be in a way that he goes in peace and also comes out in peace. Why does he come out in peace? Because he went in peace. He went in with an understanding as to what the Avodah is, and therefore he came out. Because he understood the Avodah is to go in, to experience something that I can then take out and bring into my everyday life. The entrance into Pardes, you have to enter in Shalom, enter with the right understanding. In such a way, definitely b'shalom. So then exiting will also be positive, and that's neshamas begufim, as a soul in a body. Okay, so we can finish the sikha. We covered enough today that we can finish the sikha tomorrow. We did basically half.
Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you, Rabbi.
I mean, we still don't understand the story, right?
No.
We got to a point where we understand the story has to be explained in Gashmis.
Yeah. Probably along similar lines of another than I've used. Just about to get to brother.
Right.
Thank you very much.
It's an amazing secret. And also it just puts Purim in a whole different perspective. What it is, what it's all about. Even the 16th. Charles, you're a star. Do you know, Charles, I was called by the rabbi in Kansas, and they must have been celebrating Purim early in Kansas, because the two of them looked like they were already Haggalah Yoga. I don't know what was going on. They were also dressed up. I don't know what they were doing in Kansas. I think you can do whatever you want in Kansas, right? Because no one cares what goes on in Kansas. It's Purim, it's basically, who cares? So he has his arm around some student, he says, "This is Charles." The only other Charles I know, right? I mean, it's not a common name anymore. I had an uncle, Charles, but he was called Chuck.
Okay.
But he was Charles. Officially he was Dr. Charles, but everybody called him Chuck. He was Betzalel, which is, I think, the most common. I think usually a Charles is a Betzalel. In the old days, I don't know now, but in the old days.
And often because like Charles starts with CH, like when you write
Could be.
you also when you write in English, you write with CH. So like I met Charles over Shabbos, who's Hanan.
Okay.
Yeah.
Manyen.
Yeah.
Manyen?
So,
Right.
Charles is kind
A
of
tzadi is also the chuk,
Sado.
meaning how do you write a chuk?
Yeah, Sado.
You do a tzadi with a chupchik.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Even though in Yiddish we write tet shin. It's so funny. Blintzim. Blintzes?
Yeah.
Blintzes.
Yeah.
Okay. So blintzes is a word in English, and we don't have a tz in English, so we write tz. Okay. In Hebrew, there is a tz. What do they call blintzes in this country? Blinching. Blinching.
No.
Meaning they say a sound that they don't have a letter for. But they have a tss. You can actually write it normally. But they call blintzes in this country blinching. Now, which I don't understand how that happened, right? It's just so bizarre. Like, how do you get the blinching? It's blintzes. Like that thing knows that's what it is. It's a blintz. So call it blintzim. And you actually have a tzadi, so you can write it normally. No, blinchim with a ch. But ask any Israeli, blinchim. No such thing as a blintz. It's a blinch. You can't say it in singular. It doesn't make any sense. Blinchim.
They write chips too, right?
Right, chips. Yeah, okay. But chips is chips. I get that. If we said sips and they said chips, that would be really bizarre. Yeah, but it is a chip. That's what it is. Okay. But blinchim, I never understood that. You have the letter that makes the sound. And there's no sound like that in English. No, change it to blinching. So if you ever order a blinks in a restaurant, in a milk restaurant, they won't know what you're talking about. I have to say blinching.
It's good to know.
Interesting, if they do it in English, what do they, I'm not sure what they write in English. I mean, I always look at the English side of the, I don't know. In a milk restaurant, if there's blinching and it has an English menu, I wonder what they write. I'm not sure.
Probably blintzes.
I guess blintzes. I mean, what else would you write? That's what it is, right? But in Hebrew, it's not blintzes. It's blinching. There you go, Charles. So Charles. This guy's a Charles. So I thought of you when I was talking to him. Hopefully, he'll come in the summer. We've been trying. We're working on Charles to come in the summer.
Wow.
Rabbi Levigan wants to hit 100 in the summer.
Ooh, I've got 9 guys who have been sent to work on for Rabbi Zev.
Okay.
We'll work on them.
There's a guy in Europe. There's a shliach in Europe. I'm going to see him next Shabbos because I'm going to the European Pegisha next Shabbos in Budapest. There's a shliach in Europe who his goal is he wants to send 15 guys to Mayanot for the summer.
What, is she up in Europe? Where in Europe?
Baruch Sabach, where is he?
France?
He might be in France. I don't remember. Anyway, he wants to send 15 guys. I met him last year last year the shluchim in Europe put it together. It was sort of an ad hoc Pegisha, and they got funding from Chabad on campus, but they put it together. This year, Chabad on campus is putting it together, so it's a little more middle class, which is too bad, because it's better when the shluchim do it, and it's just a Lubavitch, and it was a blast. But now it's going to sort of be, middle class Lubavitch. But now I'm getting taped with this. I'm in trouble. But he was there, and he just a totach.